We are conditioned to outsource our discernment, to put our faith and trust in the judgment of somebody else, of usually somebody at the top of some sort of hierarchy, somebody who cannot account for every single situation, who is not living your life. It does not have your life experiences, your needs, your abilities. They cannot monitor or understand the experiences of every single person, yet they have convinced us to put our discernment and our trust in them, to go by their judgment. And I believe strongly that this is why one big reason why society is currently failing, because with outsourcing our discernment comes being easy to manipulate as well. So I wanted to talk about ways that one can unquestionably begin to take back their discernment and to know that it is coming from within, that it is not, I don't want to say not being influenced, but the layers of influence from external conditioning will start to release more and more the more you work with these three practical ways. Okay. So the first thing you have to do in order to develop your own discernment and stop outsourcing it to others is to begin calling yourself out. And this one's going to be hard because we are taught that if we call ourselves out, that makes us bad, that makes us shameful, that makes us unworthy. Okay. And this is not true. It's not true that because you have imperfections, you are unworthy. Everybody has imperfections. We're taught to hide them. We're taught to fear them. We're taught to shame them. And part of the reason that we're taught to do that is because it allows people to take our discernment from us. It allows us to go, oh, maybe I can't figure this out myself. Maybe I need somebody else to do it for me. Right. So, first, we have to understand that the things that are issues, okay, things that we normally make excuses for, issues that we have that we normally repress, we normally project onto others, we normally make excuses for. There's nothing inherently wrong with those things. And it's better to call ourselves out and to actually work on them. It's better to learn to love those things as part of ourselves and actually work with them like you're working with maybe a child or something vulnerable that needs you, okay? To actually begin to work on the challenges that are within you. So once you begin to call yourself out for your own BS and be really honest with yourself, it will make it exponentially easier for you to be able to understand it in others. And not only will it be exponentially easier for you to recognize it in others, you will meet them with more compassion because you have had to meet yourself with more compassion. When you begin to learn how to call yourself out with love, you will begin to understand what makes other people tick as well. You will begin to understand when somebody is speaking from a place of ego, from a place of self protection, from a place of making excuses and projection, and when somebody is speaking from a place of authenticity, a place of truth, a place of alignment. Okay. So the first thing that has to be done in order to reclaim your own discernment, your own ability to make judgments, is you have to be able to call yourself out. And you have to get over the programming that says you are bad if you do so. The second thing and the second two don't really have to be in order, I don't think. But the second thing that is really important for people to know, the second thing, this one is pretty simple, is to understand the difference between subjective and objective. Because I've noticed that this is something that doesn't get talked about. People don't talk about the difference between subjective information and objective information. People pass off subjective information as if it is an objective truth. Most of reality is subjective. And this isn't to say that there's something wrong with subjective information. Subjective information can be very useful, but it is important to understand that it is just that. It is subjective. It is not an inherent truth to reality. Subjective means that it is experienced by the subject, but it is not an inherent truth. Objective means that it is verifiably, empirically provable. It is right in front of your face. I mean, not necessarily right in front of your face, okay, because it gets a little dicey. Like, there are examples such as, when it comes to spirituality and history and things of this nature, objective cannot be anything other than this person said this at this time. This is the closest translation. This person made this claim at this time. This is the closest translation. That is objective. What is subjective about that is whether it was true or not, if that person actually had that experience that said the thing, what the extenuating circumstances are. Most of reality is subjective. The subjective experiences that other people have can be very, very useful pieces of data to add to your own repertoire, but they are not useful to create your own truth, your own discernment. For example, I listen to people's subjective experiences with the knowing that they would interpret things slightly different than I do, but looking for patterns, looking for things that are shared between us, things that are different between us, and you like usually adding that to my pot of like information when basing my decision, but understanding that what they're saying is their subjective experience unless they have objective proof. The reason this is important is because a lot of people pass off their subjective interpretation as if it is objective, and they do so in a way that creates mob mentality, that creates cult like thinking, that creates groupthink, because they're passing off their subjective perspective as if it is an inherent law to reality. So, an example of this would be religion. Somebody says, well, the Bible says X, Y, and Z, so it's true. And this isn't to say I don't see truth in the Bible, because I do believe there is truth in the Bible, but it is to say that the Bible is full of subjective, human interpretations of the divine. As somebody who interprets the divine and speaks to the divine myself, I know how subjective those things can be. We cannot be basing inherent truths of reality off of a religious text that the only objectivity to it is this person made this claim about this reality at this time. This is a concept that could be played with. And when you start playing with what is subjective and what is objective about reality, it can take you down so many rabbit holes. I'm not even going to get into it. Just know that the objective part of what you're hearing is what can be verifiably proven. And the subjective part is the interpretation, what that means. Okay. Or somebody's interpretation, right? The next thing that is important, and I actually learned this one before I learned about the difference between subjective and objective information in regards to discernment, because I was guided to do so, is how to tap into your own body. Okay. And for this one, for intuition, because your body will give you signs. Your body will give you signs of warning and what certain things mean and how you should proceed. And your energy, your intuition, your spirit will give you signs. But you got to do the first one in order to do this one. Because if you haven't started calling yourself out yet, then you really probably won't be able to be in tune enough with your body to understand the difference between an ego protection mechanism and a true warning sign. Reactions that I have had as an ego based protection mechanism, I have mistaked as me being angry with somebody or something being a warning, but it's actually not a warning. It's actually much more complex than that. It's actually an ego-based protection mechanism, which doesn't mean I'm wrong and it doesn't mean they're wrong. It means something in my ego is being bumped up against my shame-based ego, my protection-based ego, not my personality, because I know there's a discrepancy between people about what ego is. Is it your drive and your personality, or is it your shame and your protection mechanisms? I'm going from the psychological definition that ego is your protection mechanisms, okay? I have had reactions that feel like warning signs, but they were actually just something bumped up against my ego-based protection mechanism. And when I dissolved that ego-based protection mechanism, I find that the situation is completely different than what I thought it was. Likewise, ego-based protection mechanisms can feel good, can feel like a green light to go, because they are coping mechanisms for whatever is being bothered, right? So like it can feel good. You can feel drawn to endlessly scrolling because it's a coping mechanism. You can feel drawn to uh, eating so much sugar that it makes you sick because it's a coping mechanism. So working on the learning how to call yourself out first is really good for when you get to the part where you start to tap into your own body, because then you can kind of discern between the reactions that are ego-based coping mechanisms and protection mechanisms and actual intuition. Actual intuition, people say it is quiet. I don't really think it's necessarily quiet. I think it is intricate. I think we've been conditioned to look for outside judgment and information and guidance for so long that our true intricate intuition feels very complex. It's like a web, right? Like we live in a reality where they tell us that the guidance is this or that, right or wrong, black or white, this way or that way. Like they tell us that there's clear cut boundaries, and that's not reality. Reality cannot fit into boxes like that. So when you actually start to tap into your intuition, you will start to find this complex webbing of intuitive understanding. I first started this by tapping into my intuition for what I wanted to eat. So I started paying attention to how my body felt and what it told me about specific food cravings. And I found that my body did crave foods that were nutrients that I was missing. There's one specific time I remember where I was really craving what I thought was sugar. But then I tapped into it a little deeper and I realized it was black licorice because I was like, why would my body be craving sugar if I'm trying to tap into what is nutritious for me? And then I looked up what black licorice is supposed to taste like. And I found two things. One was star anise. I forget what the other one was, but I think it might have been licorice root. But star anise was the one because star anise has medicinal abilities, and one of them is if you have a sore throat, if you have a cough, if you have congestion, if you have a cold. At the time, I had a sore throat, cough, congestion, cold. So when I tapped into my body's intuition that made me crave star anise, I then went to the store and I think it might have been licorice root and star anise, both help colds. This is like 3 years ago at this point, so I can't remember specifically. They both help colds for different reasons in different ways. Like they hit kind of different areas. So then I ended up going to the store and getting licorice root tea and actual star anise in a jar, like dried star anise, and making tea out of it. And it did make me feel a lot better. And there was a feeling of satisfaction that, like, my intuitive craving, my intuitive calling was fulfilled. And from there, I started doing it with more body stuff, intuitive stretching, intuitive movement, intuitive eating. It began to open up to where I could, if I wanted to, put the time and the effort in, tap into my intuition for consciously, for making decisions, for conversations with other people. And this is something that you're not always going to do perfect, but it is going to develop the more you pay attention to it and the more you listen to it. And what I have found is that oftentimes I don't want to because it will challenge your brain. It's kind of like working out. It will challenge your brain and it will feel exhausting, but then it will make you stronger and it'll make your ability to follow your intuition even better. So, to summarize, the three ways that I have used to take back my discernment, to stop outsourcing my discernment, is to one, begin to call myself out with love so that I could see it in others also. Two, know the difference between objective and subjective and understand that subjective experiences and interpretations can be very valuable, but they do not determine my reality. And three, to begin to tap into my own body's senses that tell me what's right and wrong for me personally.